Hey guys, welcome back. Concept Pending, Heroes and Villains team here. A lot of what we've talked about thus far in like our process and development and what it all takes and all the different teams that it goes through. You've heard a lot of us refer to our PD team. We just want to give some clarity to exactly what that is, and we have our dear friend Mason here with us today. Who does a lot of our PD work. And when we say PD, we're talking about product development. So actually taking the conceptual ideas that we've developed, building the physical product.
Taking it from flat into physical.
That's right.
Making something out of art.
So Mason is here. Do you want to share with us like your background?
My name is Mason Shera. I've been working in product development since 2015 in all different types of backgrounds. I've done everything from watches and jewelry to hosiery and shoes, and now all the genders of apparel for the Heroes and Villains team, and just have been loving it. It's one of my favorite things. I'm a big nerd, so.
That's awesome. Watches and jewelry, huh?
Yeah, watches and jewelry, like high-end too, yeah.
That's pretty cool. When we were on the accessories part, we all managed our own product development, right? So it was like designers to development to like dealing with the factories, all that stuff. But in this world that we're now in, it's kind of divided. So I don't know if you want to, I mean, we've gone through a lot of the process, but if you want to, elaborate. So basically, the designers create the ideas. We've talked a lot about this. We share it with PD. We talk about like the types of techniques and bodies that we want to do. But if you want to share like your part in that process and
yeah, so honestly, some of the times it actually starts before y'all even start designing. I do a lot of R&D work, researching for different types of fabrics, materials, different silhouettes. Things out in the market. I work with our factories to source like new fabrications and new techniques, and I pass them over. And sometimes like I've been working with Heather, and she has taken some of the stuff that I've given and turned them into new designs and new ideas. So it starts from there, but we also, most of the time it goes through y'all come up with the designs, and then as you're designing, I know that I talk to you almost daily, and you reach out to me and you're like, hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do that? Hey, like,
100%.
Is this zipper possible? Like, can we do this zipper pull? Like, blah, blah, blah. And so we work pretty hands in hand with design. Like, PD is pretty close to y'all almost daily. I talk to y'all more than probably my own product development team.
100%. That's a cool, like the point that you're making there, like a lot of, inspiration comes from everywhere. But Mason is very, adamant in sending us all of those things that he sees if he thinks it's appropriate for the brand, so we can build off of that. So, I kind of understand a bit of it on the accessory side, but like actually building the product, like when we've been through the process, kind of explained to everybody, like we conceptualize this idea, we kind of run it by our partners or IP owners. And then we go from concept pending to concept approved, at which time we're going into sampling, and that's where PD enters the scene and takes it from there. So I don't know if you want to expand on like what that looks like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Once we go to you.
Yeah, so once y'all come to me, we usually sit down and we kind of talk through like, oh, is this supposed to be an oversized silhouette? Is it supposed to be more fitted? What fabric weight are we doing? What type of fabric are we doing? Fleece, French terry, velour, etc. And we kind of narrow down all of the different varieties of how this thing is going to actually come out in the long run. We talk through colors. Y'all help me pick out all the Pantone colors to make sure that everything is actually true to what you've designed. You don't want something coming in that is supposed to be burnt orange and it comes in like lime green somehow. And it's just like, oh, Mason, what did you do? Are you blind? This is green, not orange. Like, what are you doing? So, like, we really narrow it all down up at the front. And then once you pass it over to me and you give me all the art, I work on making sure that the art fits across all the different sizes that we order. I make sure that we are calling out the correct execution of the fabrication. So whether or not we're doing zigzag stitch finished on a patch, or we're doing a chenille patch, or we're just straight up plastisol printing, just normal print. I call all that out. I do something called a BOM, a bill of materials. Sounds scary, it's not. It's basically just a list component-wise of every single aspect of a garment. So it goes down from like the collar and cuff rib down to hang tags, neck labels, everything like that. And so I call out each one of those, the colors that are attached to it, whether or not it's a blue rib, etc. And then I do art pages from that point. So I like pull out every single art hit that's going to be on the garment. It could be an all over print and AOP. Basically anything that we're putting on there, I have to make sure it's called out, or else the factory will most likely miss it because they're not mind readers and they can't just look at a CAD without knowing. So I call out all the art. I make sure it's all there. It gets double checked by my manager. So we have all the different checks and balances to make sure that nothing's getting missed, nothing's falling through the cracks. Most of the time they don't. And then from there, it gets pushed off to the factory, and I work with our factories overseas to make sure that they understand what I've passed to them, if they have any questions. And then it's kind of a waiting game to see how the samples come out. Like, there's sometimes that it's a complete, like, they knock it out of the park, it's perfect. There's other times where they misinterpreted certain fabrications, they misinterpreted a color, and we have to do some tweaking. Sometimes our licensors or our IPs aren't enthused with what we've done, and we have to do some tweaks here and there. Most of the times our partners are really good, though, and they trust us to make sure that our stuff comes out perfect, and it tends to.
And I think, like, as with everything else, there's like knowns and unknowns, right? Like, there are things that we do all the time that we know how it's going to execute, right? And then there's adventures, the unknown, right? Where we're kind of like taking a shot in the dark and crossing our fingers, hoping that it comes back the way we envisioned. It works both ways. Like, sometimes something you think you know is going to come back the way you want it comes back different, and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Or you're like, oh my God, what is this, right? Like, sometimes it can be a mistake and be amazing.
Yeah,
you're like, you know what? This is cool. Like, let's keep it like this. But then sometimes, you know, things don't work out, and you're like, maybe we were overzealous on this.
Maybe we should have done a little bit more research on this before we were like, oh, can this factory even do these types of things? Who knows?
I think, you know, a lot of it is like references. Like, I know when I worked in accessories, like, you know, swatch cards, right, from the factory. So like different yarns, the dip dye situation, you might want to expand on those things. There's all those references. So like, if you have a swatch card or a particular fabric swatch, you know what you're getting.
Yep.
Right? Sometimes colors execute different in different fabrics, different textures,
100%.
Different threads. So, you know, you can call out a color and have two different fabrics or materials, and it can come back.
Oh,
totally.
100%. We've received some jackets where the sleeve is made out of PU, so like a faux leather, and then the body is made out of like a wool poly blend felting type of thing. And then there's patches that have embroidery and everything, and they all have the same colors across all three, and that's what was called out. But every single one of them has come in a different color, so we've had to work with our factories to get things re-dyed, like prayed that they can get the thread for this one patch to match the navy of this sleeve, and like as close as we can possibly get it, because it looks weird if it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a struggle at times. It's a struggle.
Well, you throw me a lot of loops. Your team throws me a ton of different things that are crazy, and things that I haven't thought about, or things that we as a company have never done before. It's been really fun trying to figure out things and do some more development into different things. Like, we've looked at doing like dip dyed macrame dresses and things like that, and I had to figure out, like, can we dip dye the macrame at our factory? Is that even possible? Like, what fabrication is it? Like, what type of yarn can we do? And it's been fun. It's been really testing, but like, I feel like working with y'all have helped me grow a lot just in this industry on its own.
That's awesome. Why do it unless you're going to explore and like try new things?
100%.
Like, you have to reach out there. I've always been like, you know, averse to cookie cutter repeat, like, over and over. You know what I mean? If we're like for example, you know, we do the bombers. They're great.
Yeah.
Right? We do a great job with the bombers, but not everything is going to be a bomber. Like, let's not just be the bomber jacket. You know what I mean?
Well, no, but you're not always doing, like, it's not the same bomber every time either. You really try to break the mold every single one and
We
change
alter
things
it up
up.
a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, that's sometimes a hard mold to break because a lot of people get in a mindset of this is how we do this, you know, this, no, we don't do that, we can't do that, that's too expensive, we'll never get that. But our experience in working with you in this particular like project with Heroes and Villains has been that we can throw whatever we want at Mason. It may or may not work, but he may come back with an alternate solution that solves the same thing.
I try to never just shut y'all down. I try to come up with, like, if I know that the idea that you've come up with isn't doable, I try to find alternate avenues of getting the same vibe or the same feel from a different technique.
Which is awesome. And there's like, what I find interesting about what you do is the like balance between this technical side and this creative side, where it's like you have to have this technical ability to understand the fabrications and to understand the build of the actual product and what all it takes to send that to somebody and say, this is how I want this made.
Yep.
But at the same time also have the ability to like serve up creative solutions and also, you know, providing us inspiration along the way and stuff like that. So I think that's cool. I think that's
No, I feel like it's been a really awesome experience with y'all. Like, y'all don't shut me down when I come in with ideas.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people could be like, Mason, you're in the PD team, don't have any ideas.
Oh,
like,
no.
you can't have any creative input ever. I've had that before, believe me, like across the board. Like, when I said, when I used to work in watches, they would be like, no, Mason, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know anything about women's watches. I'm like, well, I've worked in this for 5 years. I think I do.
right.
But I appreciate that y'all are always very open to me coming up with ideas and bringing them to y'all.
For sure. I mean, you can't, it's a collective, obviously, like everybody working together. So we have Heather here as well. Heather has been challenged to grow our women's business, right? So Heather came on. I mean, I think we explained some of this in some of the earlier episodes about like everybody on the team and kind of what they're focused on. But so that's like treading new territory for us. It has been somewhat of an adventure. I don't know if you want to talk about any of your experiences, you know, back and forth with Mason.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Absolutely. It was very much uncharted territory when I first came over here, and Mason and I developed a system over a lot of trial and error, which was fun, but we both learned a lot, and Mason and I work really well together because we're both a mix of the creative, technical, like Doug was saying, where we both have a lot of creativity, but we also both love geeking out over how it's going to work. Like, it looks cool, but does it function? Like, is it going to actually be a garment that people will enjoy wearing? And I think one of the first big projects we did together was the faux leather jacket for Ahsoka.
Yep.
And honestly, at the time, I don't think, because I was still relatively new then, I don't even think I realized how like ballsy it was, I guess. And it wasn't until later and later on, once I kind of realized, I was like, oh wow. But I'm almost glad that I was a little bit clueless in the beginning, because I did push forward on things that I might have been a little bit more scared of otherwise.
No, I think that was
It ended up turning out great, and the fans loved it. We ended up doing another one for the Sabine whenever the Ahsoka show came out, and that one was also well received. And
in general, like what you've done, because traditionally we were like very men-centric brand, right, in the beginning. And I mean, obviously we want to serve like as many fans as we can. And so when Heather came in and she started exploring different bodies and different techniques, and all of these things, it was like an adventure. It was an exploratory thing. Maybe Heather didn't realize that, like what she's saying, but like I don't know, Mason, like on your end.
Well,
like,
no, I mean, I was going to say, kind of when Heather started, I was thrown for a curve too, because at that point, I'd really only done men's and boys apparel for about 3 years prior to that, so I had not touched juniors apparel, and it's a whole other bag of worms. Like it's a bag of worms, can of worms. It's a whole other bag of worms.
you can put them in a bag.
You can. It's a whole other can of worms. Like it's a whole different mindset when it comes to the product development side as well as the design side. It's a lot of different fabrics. It's a lot of different fit. Like the fit of the garments is completely different, and you have to be mindful of that, and like the wear and the stretch of the fabric and everything. I had never done a legging in my life. I had no idea how to make a legging. That was your like first collection. You like passed me a legging. I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what this fabric is. I don't know what any of this is. And so it was a learning experience, like in conjunction with you.
Right.
I'm glad that you didn't know. I'm glad I put on a real good show that I like knew what I was doing, because I had no idea. And then like with the Ahsoka and the Sabine jacket, never had I made a jacket with full PU. Like I had never even looked into doing a jacket that every part of it was going to be a faux leather. And we did some techniques on that we had never done before either. Like we did like suede patches with embroidery and like all this stuff that I was like, I don't know if we can do this, but we'll try it and we'll see what they say, what it looks like when it comes in, and we'll just pray that it doesn't look like crap. And it didn't, and it turned out great. Like so you pushed the barriers that like I didn't know we could push either, and it turned out amazing. Like those jackets are like one of like the like crown jewels that I've worked on. I'm just like, I can't believe that I helped get this thing to fruition, because they looked so cool and people were so obsessed with them.
It's awesome. So I don't know if you want to talk any more about, like, I know you've explained your process. Like we give it to you. We have a vision. We talk collectively.
Yeah.
Art, colors, nesting guides. I don't know if we want to explain what a nesting guide is. But also like your process of like, hey, this is a completely new body.
Yeah.
Like this is like, for example, the jacket, right? The crop moto style. Where does that go? Like, you know, Heather's like, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. Here's my drawing. Here's a reference, whatever. And we talk to you and you're like, okay, yeah, let's try this. But where does that, like, from that point, where does that go?
So I can start with nesting guides just real quick, because that's an easy thing to explain. So nesting guides are basically, we take a flat drawing of the entire garment. It's kind of like back in the old days when you would like go to like Walmart and you get like a little packet of like the different styles of cutouts for a garment. So it's basically like the full flat area on paper that you would cut out the fabric to then construct a garment. So we take those flat panels of each portion of the garment, and it's done in different sizes across whatever size range we're ordering. And I use that with y'all to make sure that the art is sized properly to fit the garment, so that like you get a jacket in and the back art hit isn't like the size of a quarter when it should be a foot wide.
Right.
And so that's kind of how that works. So when it comes to the...
And that is because we're only creating one piece of art that must fit all sizes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, since we do things at such a more exclusive scale, like when it comes to ordering, we are able to only do certain things, like size-wise. We can only do one art size for all of our sizes of garments, which makes it a little bit difficult, because sometimes y'all have like crazy large paneled art that I'm like, this isn't going to fit an extra small.
Yeah,
I don't know what it's
for us, like in defense, like that's a huge challenge. Like we, you know, a lot of times, because when we're drawing on a t-shirt or a jacket, right?
Yeah.
We're not taking into consideration, like, if I run this text all the way from the widest point on this shoulder to the other side of the other shoulder, like, it looks awesome on my drawing.
Yeah.
But now how do I put that on an extra small, like, and still have it look cool on a 2X or 3X?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that was a learning curve for me.
Well, and I'll
100%.
say that something that Heather has really helped with her coming to the company is she is like really versed in using croquis, which I don't know if you want to explain what that is, because I can't even explain that. But like all of her, like if you look at, like, she'll give you like an image of what the garment's going to look like. It's to scale art wise. So like I can literally look at it and take what she's given me, and it is able to be scaled up to the proportion that I need it. And that's been really, really helpful.
I'm really glad that helps because I think that started back in school. They always had us working at full scale proportions because the nice thing about Illustrator working with vectors is that if you create something to the measurements you want, you can actually print that out and it's the exact size that you want it to be. And I don't know if all factories can do this, but I know that some factories can actually import that vector artwork into their pattern drafting software and make the patterns off of the initial like flat CADs. And that anything to help them usually ends up benefiting us.
100%.
But so the term croquis is pretty specific to the fashion industry, and it's representing basically just the female or male form, but it's a little bit skewed. The proportions are skewed. It's 9 heads tall, whereas typically I want to say the human body is like 6 to 7, maybe 8 heads tall.
Yep.
So it's a lot longer. A lot of that length is in the legs, and the croquis is actually designed to be more of a stylized illustration of the garment that you're drawing. So then the more realistic proportions that we draw CADs on, I actually created basically a realistic croquis so that the proportions would be a little bit more accurate because the fashion industry is a little goofy sometimes. They love making things stylized, which is great, but then you also want it to
Be executable.
like you want it to fit a normal sized person, not a Barbie doll.
100%.
And so I work in full scale, and it just makes it easier to, while I'm designing, I can gauge this is a patch that I want to put here, but is it really going to fit there? And it's kind of like a puzzle game, like playing Tetris in a way, but with art and fabric.
Well, no, I appreciate it. It's very helpful because in the entire career that I've had so many designers give me a flat drawing of their art without them taking into any consideration like the actual sizing of the garment and how it's going to work. And 9 times out of 10, the ones that aren't experienced, I haven't really ever had this issue with y'all because y'all are experienced, but the ones who aren't experienced in like taking things from flat to full production, like full garment scale, it doesn't translate and they don't understand that. And like I'll get in a sample and they're like, well, the art's like 2 times smaller than it should be. I'm like, well, this is as big as you can get it because we're doing it all the way down to a double extra small and a 3XL. Like it's not gonna, like, this is what it is. Like this is the best we can do. And then people get upset and get sad.
I think we could all use a lesson in croquis use.
No, she is a queen at it.
I don't claim to be like the most knowledgeable in apparel design. Like I said, I have an accessories background. Until this Heroes and Villains thing started. I'd never designed an apparel piece in my life. So it's constant learning. Everybody's constantly learning, which is great because that keeps you. Yeah, and that
we're all nerds. We love to learn.
Yeah, and so it keeps you engaged and it keeps you like looking forward to the next adventure. But anyway, yeah. So back to, I'm going to keep pressing you on this. What's the process? So we give it to you. You now have a concept approved style that you have all the art. You have, I guess you probably have nesting guides at that point. You have all the colors. We've had our conversations about fabric and all that stuff. So
if it's something brand new, so like if we go back to the moto jacket, if it's something brand new, typically we'll get some type of market sample just to reference like maybe the fabric or to reference the body of it.
Right.
And honestly, what I have to do is I chop it up. I punch it so that I can get and figure out what the weight of the fabric's going to be. I chop off a sleeve and I send it to our factory and I'm like, can we do this type of quilting on this fabric? Like, do you have the capabilities of that so that I can like vet and weed out which factories can and can't do the garment that we're wanting to do? And basically I just take everything that y'all have given me and then I take my background and my experience as well as the market sample and chopping it up and sending it off and make like a soup and just pray that it comes out in the long run. And then it's just day-to-day communication with our factories just to make sure that it's going to execute. If it's something new, we usually get images of like swatches, or they'll send us swatch cards. Like we've just done some things where we've gotten swatches of like fabric where it's like, is this the fabric we are wanting? Like, is this what y'all intended? And then we can approve or reject off of that. And then it goes into the full sampling stage, and it's kind of like a blind, we trust.
So real quick, just to back up. So if it's a brand new thing, it's the Moto jacket, right?
Yeah.
How do the panels, like how do we get all the cuts and all of the panels and all of those pieces figured out, like in terms of fit and everything else?
So we typically with that is we take whatever market sample we have, especially if we're doing it based on a silhouette. We'll take that market sample and I'll meet with our fit team, usually with Heather probably, or with you. I'll meet with our fit team and we'll lay out the garment. We'll compare it to the CAD or the drawing that has been made of the garment. If there's any additions, subtractions from the market sample, and then she will not actually deconstruct the garment, but she will do, like our fit tech Nicole will go through and actually measure every single thing on there, and then she will determine mathematically the grading, like will this one chest panel get bigger as it scales up, or is it going to be that same size across the board on all sizes and then everything else grades and sizes up? She, like our fit team is like the like master of making sure that all the panels are executed properly, and then once she gets those panels, like that's how we then get our nesting guides and then work with y'all on that.
Yeah, which is a huge part. It's a key part, right? Like,
100%.
Because that part of the process determines whether this thing fits comfortably or is weird or hangs off of your shoulders odd. All of those things, it's like a major, major part. Again, I go back to the knowns and unknowns because, hey, if we're going to go do a bomber jacket, if I don't alter it or anything, then I know what our standard is, because that's been established. As we're taking these like adventures on, that's where that comes like super, super key. And I'd say 95% of the time it's like nailed.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Well, I think it all goes down to collaboration and communication. Like I think that we as a team across the board, from design to PD to the fit team to Nicole who does our specs, we are really good about communication and really good about talking through exactly what our vision is and what the goal of the garment is. Nicole, you know this. Nicole sometimes is like, "What are y'all doing? Stop!
Yeah.
Like this isn't real. You can't do this." And I'm just like, "I'm just showing you what they designed, and I'm asking you, and you're telling me, so that's cool, and I'll pass that along."
Well, in that like we're learning stuff there too.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're basing things off of stuff we've seen or we know or whatever. Like if we find something that's cool and we want to do something similar, we're also learning at that moment. I can't do a gusseted pocket with a sawed off corner. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's something.
You may be able to make it an Illustrator, but that doesn't mean it's possible in the real world.
But those things are very beneficial for us to like physically be there looking at it and having that conversation and going, oh, I get it now. Now I see why we can't do what I thought looked cool or whatever. If we were removed, like if I was not part of that process with you guys, then I might just send it to you again and say, hey, or it would come in and I go, hey, but you didn't do this right. This looks weird. And you'd be like, well, we can't do that. Brother.
No, it all goes down to the communication. Like that is why I feel like we are such a well-oiled design factory machine at this point with cool stuff.
Yeah, and it's inspiring to do cool, new, fun things and learn. So that's why we work well together.
No, we're all very passionate in our own realms.
So so we got fit team. They measured out all the panels. Now we're creating a brand new jacket. We've got the nesting guides. We laid out the art. We have all the colors. We have the materials. Mason has piled this into his bomb.
Yes.
And now what?
So it gets sent off to the factory. I do costing. So costing kind of will determine what factory we end up going with. It doesn't meeting our margins, things like that. Once it's in full sampling, it's a little bit radio silence until they start getting into more depth on what they're doing. They'll send lab dips for fabric colors, things like that for us to prove, so that like we make sure that this blue is the correct blue for this character, and like we're not doing something crazy. It's not coming out gray. Things aren't looking bad. So that when our sample finally comes in, we have the closest to perfect sample that we can get. Once the sample comes in, that's where it kind of gets passed off to our IP or to our licensors to make sure that their approval is on that. And once they get that mark of approval, then I meet with y'all again, and we go one by one through every single component of the garment. Like we talk about every single thing to make sure that everything is perfect. And then I communicate all of that to the factory. We'll get revised strike-offs. We'll get revised fabrics if something was wrong with the fabric. We'll get full revised samples if something's wrong, like the fit was completely bonkers wrong.
Right.
We'll get like a full revised sample to get our approval on before we go to production. But once all of that's approved, it goes straight to production, and we just wait until it comes into us by boat and into our warehouse, and we can get it to the customers.
Yeah, so you said lab dip. They haunt me every time. Like the lab dips drive me nuts. But yeah, so just so everybody knows, that's a dyed fabric basically, or a sourced fabric in whatever color that we've identified.
Provided, yeah.
Yeah. But they come in, typically there's like
They
three or four of them, and it's like an inch square.
Yep.
And they all look the same. It's like
A lot of times they do all look very similar. There are some times though that they have been very noticeably different. You'll have like a yellow garment, and we'll get the yellow lab dips in, and all three of the swatches will be extremely different. There will be one that is like basically what we wanted, hopefully.
Right.
And then there will be one that's like weird brown tones, and then there's one that's like, how did this yellow turn red? And
it also like if you're dealing with like heathered fabrics or washed or like something like that.
Heathers.
There's like and there's like
Not
so
you,
much.
but
There's so much variance, I guess, there. But the majority of the time, I'm always like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, just
well, and I'm showing you
any
because
of
I
them.
want it to be perfect.
Oh,
I need
I
it to be
know.
perfect,
I
and
know,
I
I know.
don't want it to look like crap. And
I
then
know.
y'all come back to me and be like, Mason,
yeah, no.
this was supposed to be black, not a
we
dark
never
gray.
come back to you. It's always our fault. We know that.
It's not true. I have made mistakes.
I think that like sometimes
Yeah, we all do.
there's a level of like anxiety at that point, because everybody right there when we're having that conversation knows the decision made right here
Is it?
is this determines your destiny.
Yep.
And so when this thing comes in and you want to tell me that this isn't the right color, I'm gonna take you back to this conversation that we had.
And I'm going to be like, we have already bulk dyed the
Yes.
fabric. We cannot stop.
Right.
Like, it's too late.
So yeah, that's another key point. So the lab dips come in, and that's when we're basically committing to those fabrics.
Yep.
Right? So at the factory level, they're like, all right, cool, we got the color confirmation, we've got the weight, we know what we're doing here. Boom.
We know how many units you're ordering, the size range of the units. So then they actually do like the bulk dyeing process of the fabric. And then you just have like a huge roll of navy fabric that is in the color that you approved. And then the sample comes in and you're like, well, that 1 inch square did not look like this. And I'm like, but it sure did. It did.
In a 1 inch vacuum, yeah.
Well, and it's even harder with yarns. Like yarns are like you are approving yarns for like a knitted sweater, and the yarn is just literally, they don't give you like a little tiny square of a knit. Right. It is just a thread. And you have to look at that thread and determine whether or not that thread color is the right color for this entire garment, but it's just a thread. You don't know what it's going to look like when it forms an entire panel, just the thread.
My same argument as the inch square piece for the entire garment. It's difficult. But like I said, the majority of the time we nail it.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's mistakes, but sometimes those mistakes are happy mistakes or things we can live with.
I think the more difficult, like off of that, the more difficult and the more like full limbo, like you don't know what you're going to get, is like tie-dyes, mineral washes, any type of garment wash that's like something else.
Yes.
Like you never know what you're going to get. Like you'll give them a Pantone and you'll be like, I want a light mineral wash on it. And the Pantone's a green. And then the sample or the lab dip comes in and it's now, once you apply the mineral wash to that green, it is now yellow.
Yeah.
Or it's like some random color that you never would have expected. It completely changed the outlook of the garment because we wanted the mineral wash look, but we didn't know how it would react with the actual color.
Which is crazy.
And we've gotten some really cool stuff from that though. Like we've gotten some really interesting fabrics that we've then turned into garments down the road based on that, like just trial and error of like, what does this dip dye look like?
It's literally
actually?
a science experiment.
100%.
Yeah.
Like there's been some things where you've like given me like the fabric is green, but you want to dip dye a purple on it, and without me thinking about it, I'm like, oh cool, yeah, let's go. But when you put a purple dye on a green fabric, that then turns brown. And I never, like, you would think that you would just automatically know that from like what colors make green, what colors make blue, blah, blah, blah. You would think you would get that, but like you don't because you're like, it's fat.
Yeah, they'll do
it's not going to interact like
I
that.
swear
It's
I've
just going
seen
to
this
change the
before.
color.
Yeah.
It's fine. And then this brown green thing comes in and you're like, well, that was supposed to be purple. Cool. So scratch that from the list.
Noted for the future.
That was a fun experiment. Okay, so is there anything else in the process that we need to address? Like, so you get the sample, right? Mm-hmm. We try the fit, we check the colors, we check the build, like all that stuff. Okay, yeah. So then we're sending that to our partners, licensed partners, and then they are actually reviewing it.
Yep.
The same. So based on our original concept, they go back and check the accuracy of what we originally designed that was concept approved and is now a physical, and are they going to sample approve it based on that original.
And sometimes it's not a perfect match. Like it happens, it's not a perfect match, but it ends up being, like you said, a happy chance that it's not a perfect match. And the licensor will even agree with us most of the time. They'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Like this doesn't look like it exactly, but this works. And it's still in our genre realm of what this should have looked like.
Right.
They're really good about trusting us to make sure that we're not like going to put some like heinous thing out there that destroys their street cred for their brand and their license.
Well, we wouldn't do that. Right?
No.
Like we have to scrap it if it falls apart.
Which
we've
done.
Those,
No, we have.
We've had problems. And I think like a lot of our projects we've worked on, like for me, a lot of the times, like in the back of my head, I'm thinking about that thing that we tried and we screwed up, but we're going to figure it out, you know, like it's just a matter of time of figuring out where we're going to take another attempt at it. You know what I mean? So I think it's very interesting. It's a very interesting world that you live in.
It's very interesting world. It is curveball after curveball after curveball.
That's good.
Like, oh, we need to move up this drop 10 weeks. And I'm well,
that's another side of it, right? Like
the
timelines and the things you have to coordinate there. But yeah, I mean, and then that kind of ties in with some of the other teams, with our production team and all that stuff.
Yeah, marketing, it ties into that. Like, if we don't have our samples in time,
that's a great
point.
We
cannot take photos, and then we don't have the photos ready for a launch.
And
it's just...
back to the conversation of you saying, okay, we got the sample in, and then we finally we all meet one last time, and we go over every single little detail. And sometimes there's a production change.
Yep.
And we won't have that sample until we get the TOP, top of production, right?
Yep.
So we don't have a marketable sample in-house available for photography or video or any of that until we get to that that TOP.
Yeah.
Those can be quite a debacle. I know our marketing team can speak more to that, obviously, and those frustrations. And, you know, I've seen it in the past, like, if there is like a communication breakdown somewhere along the way, the next thing I know, we launch a collection and there's the wrong
patch on
yeah,
it. Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
you're like, oh, I remember that sample. Like,
Yep.
that's the initial. So that's a huge part, right? Like, we have to, because we move so fast.
Yeah.
There's no time to go back and get another one real quick and have that fixed and now get photography.
No, like a
It's
dream
like,
world, we'd get a revised sample within a day, but like that's not real. That's not
never.
how
Yeah,
a sample is made.
yeah, never gonna happen.
No. So
Yeah. So you mentioned a strike off. What exactly is that?
So a strike off is typically what happens is for the most part, we'll get full garments sampled. And when they come in, like the art hits are what we would consider a strike off if we need a revision. So let's say you have a jacket with a chest patch on it that's just chenille. You requested it to be a chenille in this one certain color. Sample comes in, the color's off, or it's missing a letter in one of like the words that's on the patch. It gets rejected by us internally. It could get rejected by the licensor. It just depends on how much of a wrong it is. And when I go and release comments and approve things to production, I'll be like, hey, this patch, overall the quality is right, but this color is off, or you're missing this letter, or there's this one thing wrong. I need to see a revised sample of it, which would then be a strike off. So we're not getting a full revised garment. We're getting like a little tiny patch or like a cutting of the garment that is just that, so that we can then internally improve or reject it from there.
Right on.
Strike off, slab dips, all the crazy terms.
AC, do you have anything you want to add at all? I mean,
My first interaction with Mason, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was the Godzilla cardigan.
Yeah.
And obviously for me, that was my first experience working with cut and sew for Heroes and Villains. And the thing that I got, right away was how excited he was, even, for to build the cardigan, and how he came back to me with other ideas and things to consider and all that. So I saw the energy in him, right? And I was thinking, how he does it, because I know how tedious it's gonna be once we start. I know all the documents that we need to create. I know all the the effort and exercise that has to be done in order to get this done, right? So how he does it, how he keeps his energy in, style by style, because this is gonna be a huge project. So I'm just curious. Is there a way you go around, not to feel burned out or feel too overwhelmed every time, what do you do?
I think it would be different if like y'all were mean to me. Like if y'all were like mean and like belittling and like meh about everything, then I would be burned out probably. But no, like I take joy. I'm also like, I am the Heroes and Villains customer. So like I am the nerd. All of our licenses are licenses that I thoroughly know a lot about. So that just happenstance worked out that like I am a nerd for all of our licenses, and I understand them, and I know the characters, and I know like all of this stuff. So like I think that really has worked out in our favor too. That I am passionate. Like I don't want you to give me a Godzilla thing and me be like, I don't care about how this looks. Like okay, I'll make what you made, whatever. Like I care because I love that, and I want it to look. Yeah, it's a reflection of me too. Like if it comes out crappy, then it's going to be like, well, Mason makes crappy products. And I want it to look good, but I also want to make sure that like our customer, because like as a customer of our brand too, I want to make sure that I would be happy with what I'm getting.
right.
And I don't want to give our customers like poorly made product or something that doesn't match back to the license or back to the character of that license and does it injustice. Like I don't want it to look bad. I also don't sleep and I drink lots of tea. So there's that. That's probably also how. And I know AC just is down in coffee left and right. That's how.
I'm powered by it. So yeah, I can
Awesome
credit.
juice.
But yeah, I mean, the experience was great. I think there were a lot of changes from the initial design. But at the end of the day, the whole experience of going back to Mason and making the changes and the suggestions he brought, it made it all worked out really well. So yeah, I'm just super intrigued of that other side. So I'm hoping to dive into more of it.
Yeah, and
For
that
sure.
was that was a pretty like groundbreaking style or piece as well, right? Like we had never done that. And I think AC, like to your question about how Mason was excited and how do you stay, like I think that new creative adventures excite all of us and excite Mason to
Right.
like figure out the technical side of how to make that work. So,
Yeah, no, it would be boring if every
what I'm
day
saying.
all I was doing was a short sleeve T-shirt with
What-
one art hit on the front of it over and
Yeah.
over and over
Yeah,
and over
what
and
if you
over.
were doing like color separations?
Oh,
every day,
I
over and
can't
over and
even
over,
imagine.
and that's
that
all you
life.
did.
No,
You know what I
like
mean?
everything that y'all pushed to me, almost every single time there is one aspect of it or the entire aspect is brand new, and it's something that like I'm like, well, let's see,
Right.
can we turn this art into a chain stitch patch? Who knows?
Let's
Let's
find out.
try it
Yeah.
out and see. And that keeps me on my toes and it keeps me learning. And I think that kind of like Heather said, like we all like to learn. Like our team is really big into like learning and growing, and I think that has just been something that I love too.
Yeah.
And I just love working with y'all. Y'all are always just like so fun, and like we can bounce ideas, and we've spent like hours. Like I've spent hours with Greg, literally not talking about actually making garments, just talking about nerdy things,
Yeah.
and like, oh, like did you see
will.
this? Did you? No, he will.
Yeah.
Greg is
Get him
the
started.
nerd of nerds. He is like
King nerd.
king nerd, the top of the tier of the nerd list, and his knowledge is like astounding.
It's ridiculous.
And he and
Sometimes
I
I
can
wonder
just
if he's making it up. I'm like,
well, and honestly, sometimes I do too. But then I know, then he says stuff, and I'm like, wait, I know this information too. You know what? We're on the same page here, and like like y'all just like introduced me to new stuff too. Like he's introduced me to new licenses that I would never have like looked into before, and I now am addicted to them because of y'all. So
So, and then you mentioned another thing about like, would I wear this and does this meet the expectations? Like, I think that's another key factor of like all of us collectively working together is understanding that, you know, what our expectations are of the product. And that it's not just like cookie cutter, you know, whatever, like poorly thought out. You know, like there's no sense in the details or why we're doing what with what. I think that's the beauty of how the whole synergy works is that like we're all nerds, right? So we have like that going for us. But then we have this level of expectation of the quality of the product that we're creating and why we're doing it. And as long as we're like all on that same page, when we come up with the ideas, it's like everybody's excited.
yeah, we're not doing just like an asset slap of like, here's this one character's face, that's what you get.
Right.
We're like out here, like I feel like y'all are designing and I'm helping y'all create immersive garments that like fit the world that these characters and these genres are from. We're making like something that's like a tactile version
Yeah.
for the everyday person, not just
Yeah.
a graphic tee,
100%.
which I think is
Expansion,
what is really
expansion of the
important.
universe,
Yep.
as we like to say.
Doug said something when I first started, I think, whenever you were giving me like the rundown on the brand and everything. You said you have to ask yourself, will the character approve of this?
Yeah,
and if
truth.
not, then we don't do it.
100%.
Very true.
And I really like that mindset.
Yeah. Would the character approve of this piece?
Yeah.
If not, then don't do it.
Agreed.
There was another one I used to say was, we're not trying to make a Darth Vader jacket. We're trying to make Darth Vader's jacket.
Oh,
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's
So
good.
it's not like putting, you don't put Darth Vader on the jacket. You put him in the jacket.
Which we did.
I
And
was
now he
just
is
about
worn,
to say.
and he is now worn it.
Did. Thank you much, Mason. I'm sure it's not the last time we'll hear from you here. Thank you, AC and Heather, for joining us. And that should wrap it up. Concept Pending is our podcast. Heroes and Villains is the brand. heroesvillains.com. And check us out on Instagram and social at heroesvillainsbrand. Thank you much.